Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling something that really touches every part of our lives, how we form habits.
And maybe even more importantly, how those habits shape who we actually become, our identity.
Exactly. We've looked at a whole bunch of ideas, a lot of different sources, exploring why some routines stick and others, well, just don't.
Right, and that really powerful connection between what we do day in and day out and our deep down sense of self.
So our mission here is to sift through all that information, pull out the really crucial bits, the actionable stuff.
Yeah, the insights you can actually use to build better habits and, like you said, understand that identity piece.
We want to cut through the noise, avoid that feeling of being overwhelmed, and just get to the core knowledge that can spark real change.
Okay, let's do it. Where should we start?
How about with something that I think trips a lot of people up? That feeling when you're putting in all this effort, but you're just not seeing results yet. This idea of the plateau of latent potential.
Ah, yes. That's such a key concept. Think of it like an ice cube.
Huh?
You're heating it up, right? It goes from, say, 25 degrees up to 31 degrees. You're adding energy the whole time.
But it's still ice. Nothing looks different on the outside.
Precisely. All that hard work, that consistency, it feels like it's going nowhere, but it's actually being stored. Latent potential.
Until you hit that magic number, 32 degrees.
Bam. It starts to melt. That breakthrough, the thing people might call overnight success, it's really just the visible result of all that stored up, unseen effort finally reaching a tipping point.
So that connects directly to habits and identity, doesn't it? You're casting these little votes with your actions, maybe not seeing a huge identity shift immediately.
But that internal energy, that potential, is building. You're getting closer to that melting point, that identity transformation.
Okay, so that explains the delayed results, but let's dig deeper into that identity connection. How fundamental is it?
It's incredibly fundamental. The systems we build, the routines we follow, they don't exist in a vacuum. They're often reflections of our underlying beliefs about ourselves.
An identity behind the habits.
Exactly. Whether we're fully conscious of it or not.
And trying to maintain habits that clash with that core identity, it just feels wrong, doesn't it? Like swimming upstream.
It's almost always unsustainable. The sources gave some great examples, like someone wanting financial freedom, but deep down identifying as consumer.
Right, someone whose default mode is spending, not necessarily creating or saving. That identity will keep pulling them back.
Or wanting to be healthy, but fundamentally seeing yourself as someone who values comfort above everything else.
You might start the workout plan, but that identity says, nah, couch is better.
It becomes this constant battle. You can't really change the habit effectively long term if you don't also address that underlying belief, that identity.
So how do we bridge that gap? How do we start shifting the identity itself?
Well, this is where one of the most powerful ideas comes in. Thinking of your habits as votes for the kind of person you want to become.
I like that framing. Votes.
Yeah, every single action, no matter how small it seems in the moment, is like casting a ballot.
So writing one page doesn't instantly make you a writer.
No, of course not. One vote doesn't win an election. But as those votes accumulate, day after day.
You start building a body of evidence.
Exactly. Evidence that supports this new identity you're aiming for. It's the paradox of small improvements leading to really meaningful change over time.
Like the examples you mentioned, practicing violin makes you a musician. Doing that short workout makes you an athlete.
Encouraging your team makes you a leader. Each action reinforces the identity.
And it's not just about the outcome, is it? It's also about building self-trust. Each time you follow through, you teach yourself, hey, I can do this.
You literally change the story you tell yourself about who you are.
What about setbacks? We all miss a day, right? We cast a bad vote sometimes.
Of course. It's not about perfection. It's like any election, you just need to win the majority. Consistently cast more votes for the identity you want than for the one you're trying to leave behind.
Okay, that makes sense. So if habits are votes and they shape identity, what's the practical process? How do you actually do the identity change?
The sources sort of boil it down to a simple two-step process.
Let's hear it.
First, decide. Decide the type of person you truly want to be. What are your values? Who do you aspire to become? Get clear on that vision.
Okay, decide. Step one.
Second, prove it. Prove it to yourself with small, consistent wins. Those little habits, those daily votes, provide the concrete proof your brain needs to start believing in this new identity.
It's empowering, isn't it? Realizing identity isn't just fixed. We get to choose which one we reinforce.
We absolutely do. It reframes the whole purpose of habits. It's not just about getting stuff or achieving external
It's
goals.
about becoming someone, deeper than just life hacks.
Exactly. So that's the why and the how at a high level. Now let's get into the mechanics, the nuts and bolts of how habits actually form, the 4 stages.
Right. The classic loop: cue, craving, response, reward. The backbone of every habit.
Let's break it down. The cue is the trigger. Some piece of information that predicts a reward is coming.
Originally, survival stuff like seeing food or water.
Yeah, primary rewards.
Yeah.
But now, it's often secondary things. Cues predicting money, praise, status, entertainment, you name it.
Then the craving kicks in. That's the motivation, right? The urge to act.
It is. And it's tied to anticipating the reward. You don't crave brushing your teeth, you crave the feeling of a clean mouth afterwards.
Gotcha. So the craving is for the state change the reward brings.
Precisely. Then comes the response. That's the actual habit itself. Could be an action, a thought, even deciding not to do something.
Then finally, the reward, the payoff, the satisfaction that closes the loop.
And crucially, it teaches your brain, hey, that action, that sequence, it worked. Remember it for next time.
So if any one of those stages is weak or missing,
The habit doesn't form, or it breaks down. No cue, no start, no craving, no motivation. Response too hard, you won't do it. Reward unsatisfying, you won't repeat it.
understanding that loop gives us levers to pull when we want to change things. But first, we need to even notice our habits, right? Many are automatic.
That's a huge point. Our brains are prediction machines. They constantly scan the environment, learn patterns from repeated experiences.
Like those examples of experts, the museum curator spotting a fake, the radiologist seeing the tiny anomaly.
Or even the hairdresser noticing subtle changes. It's pattern recognition honed over time, becoming largely subconscious.
Which means we run on autopilot a lot. We don't consciously register every little habit we perform.
We don't. And that automaticity, while efficient, means we can easily overlook habits that aren't serving us anymore. We just assume things are the way they are.
So step 0 for any change is awareness.
Absolutely. You have to know what you're currently doing before you can change it. Behavior change starts with awareness.
And there are tools for that. The sources mentioned a couple.
Yeah, simple but effective things, like pointing and calling, literally saying out loud what you're about to do. I am turning off the stove. It makes the non-conscious conscious.
And the habits scorecard.
Just listing out your daily habits, good, bad, neutral. No judgment, just observation. Get it all down on paper to see the patterns clearly.
Okay, so once we're aware, how do we best start a new habit? There was that powerful study.
The implementation intention research from the UK, fantastic study on exercise habits.
Right, they had 3 groups. Control group just tracked exercise.
Second group tracked and got motivation read about why exercise is good for you.
And the third group.
They did all that, plus they made a very specific plan. When and where they would exercise.
And the results were stark, weren't they?
Absolutely dramatic. The motivation-only group didn't do much better than the control group, maybe 35–38% exercised at least once a week.
But the implementation intention group.
91%, more than double, just from having that specific plan.
It shows the power of clarity over just vague intentions like, I should exercise more.
Exactly. The brain loves a concrete plan. The formula they used is so simple. I will behavior at time and location.
You can apply that to anything. I will meditate for 1 minute at 7 a.m. in my living room.
I will write down one thing I'm grateful for at 6 p.m. at the dinner table. It removes the ambiguity, the decision fatigue in the moment.
And there's a related idea, habit stacking.
Yeah, that builds on implementation intentions. You link your desired new habit to an existing habit you already do automatically.
Like using the old habit as the cue for the new one.
Precisely. The formula is, after current habit, I will new habit.
So after I pour my morning coffee, I will meditate for 1 minute.
Or after I take off my work shoes, I will immediately change into my workout clothes. You piggyback the new habit onto an established routine.
It creates this sort of chain reaction of good habits. Very efficient.
It really is. Now let's talk about another huge factor, environment.
Our surroundings. You mentioned visual cues earlier.
Yes, our environment shapes our behavior far more than we often realize. Think about product placement. Why do companies pay so much to have their stuff visible at eye level?
Because we're more likely to grab what's easy, what's obvious. Like the Bud Light or Starbucks examples. Availability drives choice.
It does, and vision is our most powerful sense by far. The sources mention something like, 10 out of 11 million sensory receptors are for sight.
Wow. That many.
It's dominant. So visual cues are incredibly potent behavior catalysts. If you want to encourage a habit, make the cues for it obvious in your environment.
Design a productive space, put the fruit bowl on the counter, hide the cookies in the cupboard.
Exactly. Make the good cues obvious, the bad cues invisible.
And sometimes just tweaking the environment isn't enough. Sometimes you need a bigger shift.
Right. Changing your context can be incredibly powerful for breaking old habits. If you always procrastinate at your home desk, try working at a library or coffee shop.
A new environment doesn't have the same triggers baked in.
Exactly. It's easier to form new associations in a new context. Trying to go to bed early in the same room where you always watch late-night TV is harder.
This reminds me of that incredible Vietnam heroin study. That really drives the point home.
Oh, absolutely, a landmark study. The assumption was that heroin addiction was basically a life sentence.
But when soldiers who used heroin in Vietnam came back home...
The vast majority, something like 9 out of 10, just stopped.
Yeah.
Relatively few relapsed compared to typical addiction recovery rates.
Why? What was the key difference?
The environment. Vietnam was filled with cues triggering drug use stress, peer groups, easy availability. Back home, those specific powerful cues were gone.
The context changed, the behavior changed. Radically.
It underscores that relying solely on willpower in a trigger-filled environment is often a losing battle. It's usually more effective to architect an environment that supports your goals. Be the designer of your world.
Okay, so we've made the cue obvious. Now, law 2. Make it attractive. How do we make ourselves want to do the habit?
This taps right into our brain's reward system. Attractiveness increases the odds dramatically. And the key player here is dopamine.
The feel-good chemical. We hear a lot about it with addictions, junk food, social media.
Yes, those things trigger big dopamine releases. But here's the fascinating part. It's often the anticipation of the reward, not just getting the reward itself, that causes the biggest dopamine spike.
Ah, so it's the wanting, the craving, that really motivates the action.
That's a huge driver. The brain says, ooh, something good might happen if you do this. And that dopamine surge pushes you forward.
So how can we leverage that anticipation? There was that strategy. Temptation bundling.
Yes. A very clever technique. You pair an action you want to do with an action you need to do.
Okay, how does that work?
The formula is basically 1. After my current habit, I will do the habit I need. 2. After the habit I need, I will do the habit I want.
Give me an example.
Okay, say you need to make some sales calls.
Yeah.
You dread, but you love checking scores, you could say. 1. After I finish my lunch break, I'll make 3 sales calls. 2. After I make 3 sales calls, I will check ESPN.
So the desirable habit becomes the reward for doing the necessary one. It makes the need habit more attractive by association.
Precisely. You bundle the temptation.
Makes sense. What else makes habits attractive? Social influence seems huge.
Oh, massively. We're social creatures. We tend to imitate the habits of 3 main groups.
Let me guess. The close, family, friends.
Yep. The many. Our tribe, the prevailing culture around us.
Right. And the powerful, people we look up to, role models.
You got it. We absorb habits from all 3. Think about the Polgar sisters in chess growing up in an environment where intense chess practice was framed as enjoyable and rewarding, made it attractive, despite being unusual.
Or that MIT class with all the astronauts the culture made aiming high seem normal, attractive.
Exactly. And conformity is powerful. Remember the Salman Ash experiments? People would deny their own eyes just to fit in with the group.
Yeah, wild. We really want that approval, respect, praise. That makes conforming behaviors attractive.
So joining a culture where your desired behavior is the norm can be a powerful way to make it more attractive to you.
Okay, so we've made it obvious, made it attractive. Now, law 3. Make it easy.
This one feels almost counterintuitive sometimes, but it's crucial. It's about reducing friction.
Because mastery comes from reps, from frequency, not necessarily from heroic effort each time.
Exactly. Think about neuroscience Hebb's law. Neurons that fire together wire together. Every time you repeat a habit, that neural pathway gets a little stronger, a little more efficient, more automatic.
So doing something small consistently is better for building the habit pathway than doing something huge inconsistently.
Far better. Frequency is key. Habits are often just obstacles on the way to the outcome you want. Brushing your teeth is an obstacle to having a clean mouth. So the easier you make the obstacle, the more likely you are to overcome it.
Reducing friction, like laying out your gym clothes the night before.
Perfect example. Or choosing a gym that's on your commute. Designing your environment not just for obvious cues, but for ease of action.
Like that Japanese lean production idea, constantly removing wasted effort.
It's the same principle applied to personal habits. How can you streamline the process?
And the flip side works too, right? Increase friction for bad habits.
Definitely. Leave your phone in another room when you need to focus. Delete distracting apps. Unplug the TV. Put the remote somewhere inconvenient. Add steps to make the unwanted behavior harder.
Even small friction helps. It reminds me of the decisive moment idea, that tiny first step.
Yes, that initial action often determines whether you follow through or not. Just putting on your running shoes is a decisive moment. Once they're on, you're much more likely to actually go for the run.
Which leads directly to the 2-minute rule. Love this one.
It's brilliant because it tackles that initial friction head on. The rule is, when starting a new habit, scale it down so it takes less than 2 minutes to do.
So read every day becomes read one page.
Do yoga becomes roll out my yoga mat. Study Spanish becomes review one vocabulary word.
The goal isn't the outcome initially, it's mastering the art of showing up. Starting.
Exactly. You can optimize later. First, make the start incredibly easy. Anyone can meditate for 30 seconds or do 2 push-ups. Once you've started, it's much easier to continue if you feel like it. But the core habit is just starting.
Okay. Obvious, attractive, easy. We're on to the final law. Make it satisfying.
Law 4. This closes the habit loop. Our brains evolved in what's called an immediate return environment. You hunt, you eat. You see danger, you run. Actions had immediate consequences.
But modern life is different. Lots of delayed return scenarios.
Right. The costs of good habits, effort, restriction are often immediate. The rewards, health, skill, knowledge are often delayed.
And bad habits, often the reverse. Immediate pleasure, delayed consequences.
Which makes sticking to good habits tough. Our wiring prefers immediate payoff. So we need to find ways to feel immediately successful, even in small ways, when we practice good habits.
This brings us to the cardinal rule of behavior change.
What is immediately rewarded is repeated. What is immediately punished is avoided. Simple, but profound.
So we need to inject some immediate satisfaction into good habits. How?
Reinforcement. Give yourself a small, immediate reward right after completing the habit. Doesn't have to be huge. Maybe listen to a song you like after meditating, or just mentally congratulate yourself.
And habit tracking fits in here perfectly, doesn't it?
It really does. Tracking provides multiple immediate satisfactions as a visual cue that you did it. It's motivating to see the streak grow. Crossing something off a list feels good.
It provides immediate proof you're making progress, reinforcing that identity vote.
Exactly. Food journals, workout logs, even just putting a marble in a jar for every day you stick to a habit. These visual measures make progress tangible and satisfying.
But you mentioned a caution with tracking. Goodhart's law.
Right. Be careful not to let the metric become the only goal, potentially sacrificing the actual purpose. If you only track steps, you might walk in circles instead of doing other healthy activities. Use tracking as a tool, not the ultimate arbiter.
Makes sense. And what about when you inevitably slip up?
The key is never miss twice. Missing once is an accident. Missing twice is the start of a new, unwanted habit. Get back on track immediately the next day. Don't let one slip derail you.
That's a good forgiving rule. Okay,
Yeah.
What about external pressure? Accountability.
Yes. Adding accountability can dramatically increase the odds of sticking with a habit because it introduces immediate consequences, often social ones.
Knowing someone else is watching or will know if you fail.
It's a powerful motivator. An accountability partner changes the game. Even better is a habit contract.
Okay, what's that?
It's a formal agreement, written or verbal. You state your commitment to a habit, and crucially, you state the punishment if you fail. Then you sign it, along with your accountability partner.
Like that example of Brian Harris, the entrepreneur who made a contract with his wife and trainer to lose weight.
Exactly. There were specific consequences, financial penalties, social embarrassment if he didn't meet his weekly weigh-in goals. It worked because the cost of not doing the habit became immediate and painful.
Makes the avoidance of that pain immediately satisfying in a way.
Precisely. Okay, shifting gears, slightly maintaining motivation long-term. The Goldilocks rule.
Right, finding that sweet spot. Not too hard, not too easy.
Exactly. We experience peak motivation when we're working on tasks that are just manageable, right at the edge of our current abilities. Too easy, we get bored. Too hard, we get discouraged and give up.
Finding that zone where you feel challenged but capable, that's where flow happens too, right?
Often, yes. It highlights that consistent progress, staying in that manageable challenge zone, is usually more important than occasional bursts of unsustainable intensity.
And to keep improving over the long haul, reflection seems key.
Absolutely critical. You need to pause periodically and review. What's working? What's not? Where did I make mistakes? How can I adjust my approach?
Like the top performers you mentioned, Kipchoge, Ledecky, they constantly analyze and reflect.
They do. Even just doing an annual review, looking back at your habits, your progress, your goals, can provide invaluable insights for long-term improvement.
Okay, one last philosophical point from the sources. The subtle art of never being satisfied. That sounds a bit grim.
Maybe a little. But it's about understanding motivation. Desire gets us started, pleasure keeps us going, but satisfaction, it's often fleeting.
Like happiness is the space between desires.
Something like that.
Yeah.
We achieve a goal, feel good for a bit, then a new desire emerges. We're often chasing the idea of pleasure, and the satisfaction is the feeling after the action, not a permanent state. It keeps us striving, evolving.
Interesting perspective. Keeps us moving forward. Okay, this has been a fantastic deep dive. Let's try to pull the key threads together for everyone listening.
Sounds good. I think the biggest takeaway is just how profoundly our small daily habits shape our identity. It's not just about what we achieve, but who we become through consistent action.
And understanding those 4 laws, make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, make it satisfying, gives you a real practical toolkit.
Definitely. Remembering strategies like implementation intentions. I will do X at time and location. And habit stacking after current habit, new habit can make a huge difference in getting started.
Plus, designing your environment, using temptation bundling, leveraging the 2-minute rule to just get started.
Tracking your progress for immediate satisfaction, the never miss twice rule, and maybe even using an accountability partner or habit contract if you need extra teeth.
It's a whole system for engineering better habits. And as you mentioned, for anyone wanting to really immerse themselves in these ideas and have them on hand, the audiobook link is right there in the description.
Worth checking out if you want to go even deeper.
So, a final thought to leave everyone with today. Thinking about the person you want to become, what's just one small vote you can cast with your actions today?
And maybe, how can you use one thing we talked about, making it a tiny bit more obvious, attractive, easy, or satisfying to make casting that vote just a little more likely?